For 17 long years, she scrubbed their toilets and emptied their trash. Then one Tuesday morning, she marched into that fancy conference room and kicked out the big boss himself. Everyone called her Miss Rosa. Not Rosa Martinez like her driver's license said. Not Rosa from the cleaning crew. Not Mrs. Martinez like she wished they would. Just Miss Rosa, the lady with the mop. Every single morning at 5:30, way before those office lights started buzzing and the hotshot salespeople began showing off about their latest deals, she was already pushing her rickety cart down the hallways of Sterling Corporate Tower. That blue cleaning uniform had lost its color years ago, and her old tennis shoes were completely worn flat from walking miles through that building every day. She always kept a cleaning cloth stuffed in her front pocket, never said much to anyone, and moved with this steady pace like she'd been doing this job her whole life, which honestly she pretty much had. 17 years. 17 years of throwing away their leftover pizza from late meetings, scraping sticky candy off the break room tables, and cleaning smudges off those glass doors that everybody touched, but nobody ever bothered to wipe down. To all those suit-wearing people rushing around that place, she might as well have been part of the furniture. When she walked into a room, they kept talking like she wasn't even there, like she was some kind of ghost or something. The only ones who actually looked at her were usually the new college kids or temporary workers who hadn't figured out yet that ignoring the cleaning lady was just how things worked around there. But Rosa didn't let it get to her. Well, not in the beginning anyway. She just kept her eyes down, stayed quiet, and paid attention to everything. She heard all the loud laughing coming from those corner offices. She heard every conversation that people figured wasn't worth keeping secret. All their jokes, all their bragging, all their lies. Turns out you can learn a whole lot about a company when you're invisible, and everyone thinks you don't matter. This one time, some marketing guy left his whole lunch sitting on top of the garbage can instead of throwing it away. Rosa picked it up and tossed it in the bin without saying anything. He walked right past her afterward, didn't even acknowledge what she'd done. Just looked her way and said, "Make sure that floor is completely dry before my 4 o'clock appointment." She gave him a polite smile and nodded. The very next day, that same guy spilled his morning coffee all over the floor and had the nerve to blame her for not mopping it properly the day before. She nodded again. It definitely wasn't the first time something like that happened, and it sure wouldn't be the last. Up on the 6th floor, there was this senior executive named Richard Pemberton, loudmouth who always smelled like he'd dumped an entire bottle of aftershave on himself. One afternoon, he was joking around with his secretary, saying something like, "Can you believe some people work their entire lives in a place like this and don't even rate having their own office?" She heard every word. He couldn't have cared less. He had no clue who she really was. None of them did. That whole building was packed with people who thought their fancy job titles made them important, who figured respect was something you had to earn through monthly reports and morning meetings that could have just been quick phone calls. What they didn't realize was that Rosa didn't need their approval or respect, because Rosa actually owned a bigger piece of that company than anyone walking those halls in expensive suits. But she'd never breathed a word about it to anyone. For 17 years, she'd kept that secret locked away. And right then, as she rolled her cart past those fancy executive suites, stopping to clean some greasy handprints off the glass wall with the company logo, her cell phone vibrated in her uniform pocket. Just one text message with a few simple words. "Everything's set. You give us the word." She slipped the phone back into her pocket, her face showing nothing at all. Then she kept on walking down that hallway. But this time wasn't like all the other times. This time she was heading towards something big, and not a single person in that building had any idea what was coming. Way before Rosa ever picked up a mop in that place, she used to sit at her little kitchen table down in Atlanta, Georgia, going through business papers with her husband, Marcus Martinez. This was back when Sterling Corporate didn't even exist yet. Just some crazy dream written down on a napkin from a diner. Marcus had this fire in him, the kind of hunger you can't fake or learn from books. He'd spent years driving delivery trucks for his cousin's company, hauling freight all over Georgia and Tennessee. The man knew shipping and logistics like the back of his hand. Rosa was the quiet genius, though. She never said much when other people were around, but she could look at any problem and figure out exactly what was wrong with it. Back in 1990, Marcus and his buddy Frank Coleman managed to scrape together just enough cash to start their own trucking business with one tiny office, a couple of cheap cell phones, and this ancient fax machine that broke down every other week. Rosa was their very first investor. When her mom died, she left Rosa a decent chunk of money from her life insurance, the kind of money most people would use to buy their first house. But Rosa had other plans. Put everything under your name, she told Marcus one evening. I'll work behind the scenes. Nobody has to know I'm involved. He stared at her from across their little table and asked, you absolutely sure about this? I know what I'm doing, she said, and I believe in you. Over the next 5 years, that company took off like a rocket. Frank handled all the networking and sales. Marcus ran the day-to-day operations, and Rosa kept track of every single penny. She managed their books, filled out all the paperwork, and helped write up contracts through a separate business she'd registered just to be safe. It was her way of protecting both of them. But Marcus never protected himself. In 2005, a terrible accident on Highway 285 took him away from her. Late-night delivery run, exhausted truck driver, rolled over trailer, gone just like that. Frank gave some cold, businesslike speech at the funeral that barely even mentioned Rosa's name. That should have been her first warning. The second warning came a few weeks later when Frank started filing papers to erase Marcus's name from everything and cut Rosa completely out of all company business. He figured she'd just give up and walk away. But Rosa had kept copies of everything. Legal documents from day one that proved she owned half of Marcus's portion of the company. And she had something even more powerful than legal papers. She could have marched into that office with a whole team of lawyers and demanded her rightful place as owner. But Rosa chose to wait instead, because Rosa understood that having power and knowing when to use it are two completely different things. She kept quiet, no media attention, no angry letters, just total silence. Then in 2006, she spotted a help wanted ad on a bulletin board at the local community center for overnight cleaning crew at Sterling Logistics. She circled that ad with a red pen. 2 days later, she showed up for the interview with a made-up work history, a friend's address, and brand new work boots. They hired her on the spot. Frank never had a clue who she was, not even once. And by then, he wasn't even running things anymore anyway. There was this new hotshot in charge. David Warner, some young business school graduate from Georgia Tech, who didn't know the first thing about how that company got started, but sure knew how to look the part of a big-time executive. Rosa just kept her mouth shut and showed up every night, one shift at a time, one building at a time, for 17 long years. Every garbage bag she hauled out, every toilet she cleaned, it wasn't just maintenance work. It was like being an undercover spy. She watched everything, heard everything, remembered everything, and saved every piece of evidence. But secrets have a way of coming out eventually. And Rosa was getting ready to stop hiding. After 12 years of mopping those floors, Rosa knew every corner of Sterling's main building in downtown Atlanta. She knew which door handle was loose, which coffee machine made weird noises when it was about to break, and which executives were using company credit cards to pay for fancy dinners with their girlfriends. She didn't have to guess about anything anymore. She saw exactly what was going on. Sterling had changed from a family-style trucking business into this heartless corporate machine where the big shots sat in their glass offices throwing around business buzzwords while the regular workers could barely pay their bills. She'd watched truck drivers drag themselves in with sore backs, holding overtime request forms that somehow never got signed. She'd overhear the payroll ladies talking about how they were told to cut back on medical coverage. And plenty of times, she saw good managers get walked out the door without any warning just for asking the wrong questions. There was this one guy, Michael Torres, who made the mistake of bringing up how unfair the pay differences were during a department meeting. He was cleaning out his desk the following Monday. Rosa was like a ghost in those conference rooms. People said whatever they wanted right in front of her. At first, she just took it all in, but then she started keeping notes. She had this small black notebook hidden in her cleaning supply locker, stuffed behind a box of rubber gloves. Page after page filled with names, dates, exact quotes. Who said what, when they said it, and who else was there to hear it. If you looked through that little book, you'd see things like March 22nd, let's slash the year-end bonuses for warehouse staff. They should be grateful just to have jobs. Warner to the money guy, office 612. July 8th, worker got hurt in the warehouse. Slipped and fell hard. Nobody wrote it up. Sandra witnessed the whole thing. September 5th, heard Warner say, that's the cleaning lady's problem. That's what we pay her for. I was right there listening to every word. It wasn't anger driving her anymore. It was seeing things crystal clear. She was watching a company choking on its own ego. One night around midnight, Rosa stopped her cart outside the executive floor. The whole hallway was pitch black except for light spilling out of the main meeting room. She could hear them laughing inside. Warner's voice cut through everything else. So I told the guy if he doesn't like what we're paying him, he can quit and go deliver pizzas for a living. I've got 50 more applications sitting on my desk. More laughter. Then one of the vice presidents, Jennifer Blake, jumped in with, half these people should be thanking us just for giving them jobs. They all cracked up again. Rosa stood there in the shadows, completely invisible to them. After a few seconds, she walked away, not angry, just more sure than ever. The more she witnessed, the clearer it became. This company wasn't just having problems. It was completely poisoned. And they weren't going to fix anything just because somebody asked them politely. They needed to be thrown out. She started putting together her plan, quietly, one step at a time. She arranged to meet with her lawyer in a back booth at this little diner off Interstate 20. Guy named Harold Jackson. Didn't waste words and kept everything confidential. She slid a thumb drive across the table. Years of notes, pictures, secret recordings, everything she'd been collecting since her first day. Harold didn't speak for the longest time after looking through all of it. Finally, he looked up at her and said, "You realize once you pull this trigger, it's going to turn that whole place upside down." Rosa nodded back at him. "It's already falling apart. They just haven't figured it out yet." He grinned. "I'll get the legal papers ready." The strategy was beautiful in its simplicity. Let them dig their own graves. Let them keep treating her like she was nobody special. Let them look down on her just one more time. She wanted them feeling safe and in control, because hitting the ground always hurts worse when you never see it coming. But even the most patient person has a breaking point, and Rosa's moment was about to arrive on an ordinary Wednesday morning. It all started with a paper plate. Rosa had just finished cleaning the second floor break room, wiping all the surfaces, emptying the garbage, refilling that awful powdered coffee creamer they tried to pass off as the good stuff. She was pushing her cart down the main hallway when she spotted it. A half-eaten piece of birthday cake sitting right in the middle of the floor, plastic fork still stuck in it, frosting smeared all over the carpet. Someone had just dropped it right there on the carpet, not even bothering to find a trash can, just left it sitting there like the whole world was their personal garbage dump. Rosa stared down at that messy plate, and something twisted in her stomach. This wasn't an accident. Someone did this on purpose, just to see if she'd pick it up like a good little cleaning lady. She bent down real slow, not because her back hurt, but because every bone in her body was telling her this moment meant something bigger. As her fingers wrapped around that sticky plastic plate, she heard footsteps behind her. "You missed a spot." The voice made her skin crawl. David Warner was standing at the far end of the hallway, both hands shoved deep in his expensive suit pockets, wearing that nasty smirk he always got when he thought he was being clever. Rosa turned her head just enough to see him. "Excuse me?" she said quietly. Warner started walking toward her, taking his sweet time like some kind of king inspecting his kingdom. "Right there," he said, pointing his finger at the exact spot where she'd just finished mopping. "We've got important clients coming in for a big presentation today." He stopped right in front of her, looking down like she was something stuck to his shoe. "Think you can give that floor another good scrub before they show up?" Rosa looked where he was pointing. There wasn't a single mark on that floor, not even a tiny scuff, nothing. She straightened up slow, holding that cake plate in one hand and gripping her mop handle with the other. She didn't say a word. Warner just stood there staring at her, then let out this ugly little laugh like she was part of some joke only he understood. "I swear, sometimes I think you people just pretend to work so you can collect a paycheck." Something hot flashed behind Rosa's eyes. "What people is that?" she asked. Warner stopped laughing. "Oh, come on now," he said, waving his hand like he was brushing away smoke. "Don't get all worked up about it. I'm just saying, maybe if I paid you folks a little more, you'd actually find the dirt before I have to point it out." Rosa looked at him for a long moment. No expression on her face at all. Then she nodded once. "I'll make sure it's perfect," she said. Warner clapped his hands together like he'd just trained a dog to sit. "Now that's what I want to hear." He turned around and walked off, probably feeling real proud of himself for putting the cleaning lady back in her place. He had absolutely no idea what was coming. That night, Rosa didn't drive straight home to her little apartment. Instead, she took a detour to the Sterling Records room down in the basement, a place she could get into after hours thanks to a security badge she'd borrowed from some manager who'd left it sitting by the bathroom sink months ago. She'd been holding on to it ever since, just waiting for the right moment. She moved fast once she got inside, pulled files, snapped pictures with her phone, printed out emails and budget reports. But the thing that made her hands shake with anger was the executive bonus report from last quarter. Right there in black and white, Warner had given himself a fat $47,000 bonus for outstanding operational leadership. Meanwhile, that same quarter, he'd cut the meal allowances for truck drivers, slashed overtime pay rates, and completely froze all raises for cleaning staff and warehouse workers. The man was literally stealing from his own employees to pad his own bank account. But the thing that finally broke Rosa's patience happened the very next morning. She was in the staff locker room when Cynthia, one of the other cleaning ladies, came stumbling in with tears streaming down her face. Her 16-year-old boy had been in a bad car wreck the night before, and she'd begged her supervisor for just one day off to sit with him at the hospital. Just one day. They told her no. Not enough coverage, they said. Too bad. So sad. Rosa sat there listening to Cynthia try to get the words out between sobs. This woman had worked at Sterling for 8 years, never missed a day, never complained about anything. And when her kid was lying in a hospital bed, these people couldn't care less. She was just another name on their work schedule. Rosa didn't say anything to Cynthia, but she stood up, grabbed her phone from her bag, and walked outside into the parking lot. Her fingers were steady as she dialed Harold's number. "It's time," she said when he picked up. "You absolutely sure about this?" Harold asked. "I'm sure." "All right then," Harold said. "Just so you know, this is going to get real messy real fast." Rosa looked up at the Sterling corporate tower looming above her. "I've been cleaning up messes my whole life," and she said, "Let's do this." Over the next 2 days, Rosa put everything in motion. She handed Harold all her final evidence, set up a private shareholder meeting, and scheduled an emergency company review under her legal rights as the real owner. The crazy thing was, nobody at Sterling noticed anything different. Not even when she walked into the building the next morning wearing a brand new coat, a crisp white blouse, and clean shoes that hadn't seen a drop of mop water in months. She strolled right past the front desk without even looking at her old cleaning cart sitting there. She walked straight to the elevator and hit the button for the executive floor. What she was about to do wouldn't just change her own life forever. It was going to completely destroy everything these people thought they knew about who really had the power. The main boardroom at Sterling Corporate had 14 fancy leather chairs. This huge crystal chandelier that probably cost more than most people's cars, and a massive wooden conference table that Warner loved bragging about. Said it was real mahogany shipped in special from someplace in Oregon. Like that was supposed to impress the cleaning ladies who had to scrape gum off the bottom of it every week. At exactly 10 in the morning, their monthly executive meeting started up just like always. Warner stood at the head of that big table with his arms crossed and his tie hanging loose, acting like he owned every breath of air in the room. Sitting to his right was Jennifer Blake, his right-hand woman who did most of his dirty work. Next to her sat Richard Pemberton, the one guy in that whole room who should have recognized Rosa's face by now. But he didn't have a clue what was coming. Rosa walked in about 5 minutes later, quiet as a whisper, no mop bucket, no rubber gloves, just wearing a sharp navy blazer and carrying a thick manila folder. Warner looked up and frowned. "Excuse me, we're in a private meeting here. Cleaning crew is supposed to come through after business hours." Rosa didn't even blink. "I'm not here to clean anything." The whole room went dead silent. Jennifer squinted at her like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "I'm sorry, but do you have some kind of appointment?" "I do," Rosa said, walking slow and steady toward the empty chair at the far end of the table. "And I made sure all the shareholders got proper notice." That's when Harold Jackson walked in right behind her, carrying his leather briefcase and looking calm as Sunday morning. "Good morning, everyone," he said in his deep professional voice. "My name is Harold Jackson, legal counsel for Mrs. Rosa Martinez, majority owner of Sterling Logistics." You could have heard a pin drop in that room. Warner's mouth fell open, but no sound came out. Rosa set her folder down on that expensive table and flipped it open real slow. Inside were the original partnership papers from 1919, updated ownership documents, and a legal letter transferring all company control to her after Marcus died. Richard shifted in his chair like someone had just pulled the floor out from under him. "No," he whispered. That can't be right." Rosa turned to look him straight in the eye. "You remember those contracts, Richard. You helped Frank write them up." He couldn't even speak. Rosa stepped closer, her voice steady and quiet. "For 17 years, I watched how this place turn into something my husband wouldn't even recognize. Watched you stuff your own pockets with bonus money while you ignored safety problems and punished good workers just for asking to be treated like human beings. She looked straight at Warner. And I watched you turn Marcus's company into your own personal toy. Warner tried to force out a laugh, but it came out all shaky. This is, okay, this has got to be some kind of mistake. I don't know what kind of con game this is, but it's not a con, Harold cut him off. Every single document has been checked and verified. And as of right now, Mrs. Martinez is calling for a vote of no confidence in you as CEO. She has full legal authority to do that under the original partnership agreement. Warner shot up from his chair, slamming both hands down on that fancy table. You people have no idea what you're messing with here. Rosa walked around the table real slow, looking each person dead in the eye. 17 years, she said quietly. Every single one of you looked right through me like I was invisible. You let good people get hurt. You let this company turn rotten from the inside out. She stopped right next to Warner's chair. I gave you all plenty of chances to show you had some decency left. And you failed every single time. Warner's face went bright red. You think you can just march in here and steal my company? Rosa leaned in close. I don't have to steal what's already mine. Harold pulled out a small stack of official-looking letters and placed one in front of each person at the table. Effective immediately, Mr. David Warner's employment contract is terminated. Building security has been notified. Warner's voice cracked like a teenager's. You can't do this to me. Richard just shook his head and muttered under his breath. She already did. Two security guards walked in a few seconds later. They didn't say anything, just stood there waiting. Warner looked around the room, hoping somebody would stick up for him. Nobody did. He grabbed his cell phone and what was left of his pride, then stormed out of there like a little kid having a tantrum. Jennifer Blake suddenly remembered she had some urgent meeting to get to and practically ran out behind him. Once the room cleared out, Rosa turned back to face the remaining board members. I'm not here to play power games, she said. I'm here to fix what this place used to stand for. One of the younger guys at the table, some executive named Michael Torres, who couldn't have been more than 35, raised his hand like he was back in school. What exactly do you want to tackle first? Rosa smiled for the first time all morning. We start by listening to the people who've been getting ignored the longest. She closed her folder with a snap. Things are going to change around here starting today. But Rosa knew that just because you throw out the trash doesn't mean your house is suddenly clean. The real work was only just beginning. The following Monday morning, Rosa parked in the executive parking lot for the first time in her life. She didn't like it one bit, not because of the fancy parking space. It was bigger, closer to the building, covered from the rain and snow. But something about that executive lot felt wrong to Rosa, like it was only meant for people who'd never had dirt under their fingernails or sweat on their shirts. Still, she parked there, walked through those glass doors, and kept her head up high. She smiled at the young woman behind the front desk. Good morning, Tasha. The receptionist's eyes went wide. Miss Rosa, is that really you? It's just Rosa now, she said, stepping into the elevator. No mop bucket, no squeaky cleaning cart, just a small notepad and a day packed full of meetings. By 9:30, she was sitting in her new office. Fresh coat of paint on the walls. Same big window view that Warner used to brag about to anyone who'd listen. But Rosa didn't waste time staring out at the city below. She had way too much work to do inside these walls. First thing on her list, call a meeting with the staff. Not the board members, not the fancy executives, the real employees, truck drivers, office workers, cleaning crew, customer service people. Everyone was invited. That conference room filled up fast. People looked confused. Some seemed suspicious. Nobody knew what to expect from the cleaning lady who'd somehow become their boss overnight. Rosa walked in and stood at the front of the room. No fancy microphone, no PowerPoint slides, just her voice and the truth. I want to start by saying thank you, she began. Most of you never knew who I really was, and you didn't need to, because your hard work spoke louder than any job title in this whole building. She looked around the room at all those faces. I'm here to change things around here, but I can't do it by myself. I've spent years listening to your complaints, your worries, your good ideas, quietly in the background. Now I want to hear them out loud. People started shifting around in their chairs. This wasn't what they'd expected at all. A truck driver named Alonzo raised his hand. Does this mean we're getting our overtime pay back? Yes, Rosa said without hesitation. And you'll get back pay for the last 2 quarters. You'll see it in Friday's paycheck. Deborah from the HR department stood up. What about our health insurance? It's been getting worse every single year. We're already looking at new insurance companies, Rosa told her. And every employee is going to get a survey so you can tell us what you actually need. No more secret meetings about your benefits. There was no clapping, no cheering, just dead silence. And then people started whispering to each other, like they were slowly figuring out that she meant every word she was saying. Someone called out from the middle of the room, "What about all the people Warner fired for no good reason?" "We're looking into every single one of those cases," Rosa answered. "If you got fired unfairly, someone will call you. I can't promise everyone will get their job back, but at least your name will be cleared." Another voice came from the back of the room. "You're really the owner?" someone asked. Rosa smiled. "Always have been." She ended that meeting with one simple promise. "If you speak up, I will listen. And if you work hard, you'll be respected." After that day, things didn't get easier. They got a whole lot harder. The executives who were left didn't exactly roll out the welcome mat for Rosa. A few of them tried to fight her decisions, arguing that she didn't have the right business education. One guy even had the nerve to question whether she understood how to grow a company. Rosa looked him dead in the eye and said, "I turned 17 years of pain into patience. I think I can handle your budget reports." That shut him up real quick. She brought in new department managers, promoting people who'd been ignored for years. She changed supplier deals, got better lease agreements for the warehouses, and brought back the employee appreciation barbecue that had somehow disappeared from the budget years ago. She made it a point to visit every single department, sat down with the workers, ate her lunch in the break room right alongside them, and actually listened to what they had to say. Slowly but surely, that whole building started feeling different. Not softer, just more honest. One evening, Rosa found a handwritten note on her desk. It was from Cynthia, the cleaning lady who'd been crying about her son. It said, "I never thought someone like us could make it to a place like this. You showed me I was wrong." Rosa kept that note in her top desk drawer. But even after all the changes she made, one question kept coming up in whispers around the office. And Rosa knew she'd have to answer it eventually. Why did she wait so long? It was a question she heard over and over again. "Why'd you wait, Rosa?" Some people asked it because they were curious. Others asked it with doubt in their voices. A few seemed quietly angry, like maybe she'd let things go on too long. But Rosa never got defensive about it. She'd just lean back in her chair, fold her hands together, and give the same answer every time. Because power only matters when you know how to use it right. See, Rosa didn't wait because she was scared. She waited because Sterling needed to show its true colors without her stepping in. She needed to see it all with her own eyes. Needed to watch that rot rise to the surface where everyone could see it. Because if she'd made her move too early, they would have said she was overreacting. They would have twisted it around, made it sound like she was just some angry woman making a big fuss over nothing. But 17 years of silence? That made her impossible to ignore. She saw everything. She let it all play out. And when the time finally came, she didn't have to argue with anyone. She just showed them the truth, and they crumbled under the weight of their own terrible choices. The cleaning lady had become the witness, and eventually, the judge. One afternoon, Rosa walked back down that same hallway where Warner had once pointed at the imaginary spot she'd missed. Same carpet, same fluorescent lights. Except now, everything was actually spotless, and nobody dared talk down to her anymore. A young intern passed her in the hallway, slowed down, and said nervously, "Hi, Mrs. Martinez." She smiled at him. Just Rosa. That same afternoon, she threw a little party for the staff out in the company parking lot. No fancy speeches, no corporate banners, just food trucks and folding chairs and people laughing together again. Alonzo, the truck driver, tapped his soda can against hers. "Here's to the quiet ones," he said. Rosa raised her can, to the ones they never saw coming. The real lesson here? It wasn't just about Rosa owning the company. It was about how quick we are to judge people by what they're wearing, how fast we talk over someone holding a mop, how easily we assume that someone's worth is tied to whether they have a fancy office or not. Rosa wasn't some miracle exception. She was a reminder. People don't become invisible just because you stop looking at them. And sometimes the person sweeping your floor is the one who built the whole house. So if you work with someone you've never really talked to, maybe take a minute to say hello. You never know who's got the keys to the entire building. If this story made you think, even for just a second, share it with someone. Because right now, somewhere out there, there's another Rosa getting overlooked, getting talked down to, getting treated like she doesn't matter. And maybe, just maybe, She's watching everything. Letter K, now we see her now.